Hello and welcome to First Flight, a Star Trek Enterprise rewatch podcast where we are watching and discussing each episode of Enterprise in succession. First Flight is a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions Network.
This is Commander Tucker of Enterprise. We've got some information you're going to want to hear.
Welcome, Enterprise fans. I'm your co-host, Abby.
And I'm your co-host, Chris.
Tonight, we are discussing Canamar, the 17th episode of Season 2. Canamar has a story by John Chabon and was directed by Alan Kraker. It aired on February 26, 2003. But as always, before we begin our discussion, we need to issue a read alert.
Tactical alert. All hands to stations.
There are potential spoilers ahead. We might end up talking about any part of the series at any time, so you have been properly warned. And now for a summary of this episode, it's time for the Captain's Log. Okay, Chris, let's go.
Captain Starlog Supplemental.
All right, we're continuing our tradition of haiku. So here is my haiku for Canamar. John and Trip chained. Prisoners control the ship. Archer wrestles free. It doesn't say much either.
Well, I think there's a reason for that, but I appreciate the fact that you dropped in John and not Archer twice, because that double syllable thing takes up a
Less
whole
syllables.
bunch of space. Yes, in a haiku, that is important.
But you do know when I said John, I heard John.
Yes, nobody says it like Silic. Nobody says it like Silic. So if that's my lasting legacy in people's brains, I am not sad about that.
3 things: John, carrot balls, and costumes.
Yes, my legacy is secure. I'm okay with that. All right, so after all that, it is time to deploy our subspace amplifiers and get into the episode. We'll start with a quick chat about the cold open and then head into our pros and decons section. Each of us will share 3 of our favorite parts of the episode, and then if there are things that don't gel with us, we will have a discussion on any decons from the episode. You might hear a dog bark in this discussion if somebody's Porthos Pick is mentioned, but we'll still discuss them all later on. And we've added in our new Viewscreen On segment where we get to talk about something we like from the episode that's just beautiful.
Okay, let's get into this episode. And as always, we start with the cold open. Abby, what are your thoughts on this episode's cold open?
You know, I like this one. The shuttle tumbling end over end with there's all the pads and the tricorders are floating around, and Hoshi's calling, you hear her, there's no one there, they're echoing, and they play very well. We don't know where they are. There's no life signs. They don't know if they're dead on the ship and there's no life signs, or if they've been kidnapped. They have no idea. And it's one of those great moments where they set up tension, and there's not much going on, but the fact that there's not much going on is the problem. And I found it a very intriguing cold open. How about you, Chris?
I mean, I love every cold open in this series if it features a shuttlepod. I love that design. I say it every time. But yeah, and then my next thought was, oh, look. Reed decided to maybe, pack the shuttlepods with communicators that they're just floating around now. So that's good. Maybe they learned from Dawn. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
We have a communicator floating around. That was my next thought.
If only there was a nightgown, right? That spare emergency nightgown you keep in your shuttle and your escape pad.
That was off camera, off out of the frame. Yeah. Literally, my notes were empty shuttle, floating communicator. It was almost a haiku of the cold open.
Yeah, there we go. It's a nice way to start.
Yeah. All right, so Abby, what is your first pro?
Okay, So I have to say that one of the things I really liked about this episode is that you get to see some of the connected track that I've been going on and on about, and all the callbacks that Enterprise can give to themselves. So I'm jumping kind of to the middle of this one, but I love that Archer uses the plasma trick to disable the patrol
Ah,
vessels that he learned when it happened to him back in Precious Cargo. And
yes.
I think that is such a nice inter-universe connection, and it is such a nice thing that we pulled from that episode when we talked about it. We're like, you know what? That was a pretty good plan. These guys are not the smartest and they made some poor choices, but that it worked. And
Mm-hmm.
look, Archer filed it away and he pulled it out when he needed it and he used it to help himself later on. And I just think that's really neat, and it shows Archer as a real person, and he gets a lot of flack online for, well, he didn't do this right, he didn't do this right, and he doesn't have experience. Look at this. He is learning from his own experience just a few episodes ago, and I just love that little bit of continuity within the world.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm glad you brought that up because it was a tough cut for me because, I loved that moment in Precious Cargo and I loved it here too. It was just fun. And it was great to see Archer not being captain, but being a pilot,
Yeah,
working the controls and working Kuroda in
yeah,
a different way. So that's a great pick and a great moment in the episode. Lots of good Starship action in this episode.
absolutely. All right, so I started us out in the middle. Where are you going for your first pro tonight, Chris?
Well, it rolls right perfectly in
Yes.
because my first pick is Archer quickly adapts his identity to become sympathetic to Kuroda.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He takes on this whole identity of the smuggler and plays along. And I think it was he just did it so smoothly. And I don't know, that takes a lot of skill to lie so convincingly and protect all the pieces in the game on the game board, but not show your hand, right? And perhaps I am mixing game metaphors, but you know what I mean.
I do. Well, and it's one of those moments where you realize Archer is so smart. Like, he's a lot of things, but he is really, really smart. Like, there's a reason that he is the first captain of the first Warp 5 starship, because he can do things like this. He can read people well, he can adapt on the fly, he can plan multiple steps ahead. I mean, he sent out that distress call that got through, he worked on Kuroda, he got, kind of had people on both sides on his side. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he had a lot of stuff going on here, and he is just so smart. And again, I love seeing how when he does this adaptable stuff, he is learning and he's showing all of this growth. And this is a good episode for Archer, like you said, not as captain, but Archer is like Jonathan first, captain second. And it's an interesting dynamic we don't get to see a lot with him.
Yeah, he's just a kind of almost alone in a tough situation with Trip, being helpful here and there. But it's just fun to see him work through the problem.
Yeah.
And act like the tough,
Mm-hmm.
Han Solo a little bit, tough guy. But yeah, I just enjoyed it. So that's my first pick. What's your second one?
Okay, so my second one is I really enjoyed the Nausicaan in this episode. And that sounds silly because he was a jerk, but I feel like for being the muscle, the sidekick henchman, he had a lot going on. Now, first of all, this is gorgeous Nausicaan design. And we've talked about this back in first season when we saw them. Like, I really like what the Nausicaans look like on Enterprise. I feel like they look more natural than we've seen them in other series. I feel like the makeup is really well done. I feel like it feels lived in. Like, this guy, his clothes felt right, and he was very expressive, even with like the big teeth and the funky, facial prosthetics and everything. The green went down into his chest and like all the way into the corners of his eyes. He really looked alien, which sometimes you don't. And in fact, the makeup in all of this was fantastic. But I liked him as
Yes.
a character because He's just this big, gruff, tough guy. But then you're also seeing he has a bit of a sense of humor when, Trip is like, well, you could at least say thank you. And he bends right down and goes, thank you.
Mhm.
Like it's just funny. But he's watching Kuroda. He's saying, you haven't eaten in 2 days. You need to eat something. But he's got more layers than what you normally see in a henchman.
Mm.
And I think that's just, it's interesting because he also does a lot of those, like, take a deep breath, give you a stare for a couple beats too long. So, like, you can see that this guy knew he was not a major player in this episode, but he put a lot of thought into this character. And I just appreciated all that there was about him.
Yeah, I liked him too. There was a playfulness about him,
Yeah.
but also threat.
Yeah.
But going to the makeup, it looked good, but to me it didn't look like Nausicaan
Hmm.
from TNG. That's the
Yes.
imprint I have for my mind,
Yes.
right? They didn't have the horns on the head, but they had that unique like mandibles in the mouth or whatever you want to call it, that mouth thing. And it still
Yep.
had that, but it wasn't as pronounced in some way. I don't know. Something was different. And so I enjoyed this Nausicaan, but that always stands out to me that they changed the makeup pretty significantly. That's all. But yeah, you're right. I loved his interaction with Trip too,
Yes. Yes.
especially,
And
as he's like, "Oh, you're the engineer."
exactly. Exactly. He's got those little bits in there where he really does want to get out of this alive. And he
Yes.
knows that, Kuroda's holding all of the power in the situation. So he should turn this thing. And what I liked was that they made it realistic enough that this is a huge alien, right? So when he gets
Mhm.
dragged out at the end, it takes both Trip
Yeah.
and Malcolm to drag
Yeah.
him through the ship because he's humongous. And he just he feels Nausicaan to me. And I think it's a lot like, talking about, do Discovery Klingons or do the Kelvin timeline Klingons look like Worf and look like original series Klingons? So I guess maybe that doesn't bother me as much, but I really do like this makeup. And I like the coloration of this one a lot. And I liked that this guy's costume looked like Nausicaan stuff we've seen, but it also looked like he might have been hard up on his luck. Like, do you remember back in the 80s and 90s when everybody had the braided and woven leather belts?
Yes.
He's got like 3 of those attached together to be his little like sashy thing that he's got going on. And I'm just like, that's funny. And I like the detail. He felt really lived in to me. So
I guess for me, it's like my core memory. If I had a core memory of a Nausicaan, is human play dumb jot.
Jot. Yeah.
So like every Nausicaan to me like has lived up to that perfect distillation of this kind of just alien Nausicaan with the grayer skin. But I will say, man, the makeup in this episode was fantastic. And the
Yeah.
Nausicaan's makeup is fantastic too.
Yeah.
So like I'm not going to take that away from Michael Westmore and the team, and all the other aliens were really good except for one type of alien wasn't that good, but I think you probably know what it is. But I'll say
Yeah,
that for another section.
All right. Well, on that, let's move on to your second pro. What are you going to take us to that was great this episode?
Yeah, I don't know if it's great, but it was interesting. And it was when Kuroda kind of opens up to Archer about being arrested at, I think, 16 years old. And he didn't do anything wrong, but it started him on this trajectory, a lifetime of criminality. And that's really sad.
Yeah.
Because as an educator, I've seen that happen.
Yep.
Even if the kid did actually do something, now they're on this trajectory. And it's really hard to get off that trajectory. And so that was really interesting. And there's something there with this character that they could have been doing more with. And it's hinted at there. And then he said, well, my life is more adventurous now. So he spinned it for himself to be something positive, but it's not. And he knows it's not as well.
Yeah, he's been through a lot. And like you were saying, we've seen this happen and it happens and it hurts your heart when it happens. But I feel like like with him, I wish they had spent more time with that. I wish it had been
Yes.
more like shuttlepod 1 was, where you had the two men back and forthing and gradually starting to open up, and that could have been, to
Or
me, that would have
stratagem.
been right. Exactly. So like I think that would have really really helped this, because I agree, I feel like that was what the commentary was supposed to be, like innocent people getting charged with fake crimes in an overly aggressive police
Police
state
state. Yep.
kind of thing. But I feel like that got lost with everything else in here. But you're right, that is a nugget that could have really been developed upon. Like twice as long, the scene of them in the cockpit talking and opening up, half as
Hmm.
long with the fighting to get out when when the ships dock with each other. Like that would have been fine
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, definitely. Totally, 100%. So it is a redeeming nugget in the episode. Not the episode needs redeeming, but it is something that you stop and pause and you watch because there's something real happening with that character and something that's unique. We don't have that kind of character often explored on Star Trek. So that's my
Yeah.
second pick.
Nice. All right. So I'm going to bring in my third one here. And I have to say that I really enjoy about the first 25 seconds of the rescue when the door opens and there is Malcolm double fisting the phasers, takes a shot with both of them before he passes one to
Yes.
Archer, which is badass. Here comes Travis, who not only
Yes.
can fly an alien ship, dock it, and do all that to keep them docked for that long, he has the giant phaser rifle and makes
Hmm.
some really nice shots. Like, he doesn't have a lot of lines, but this is another moment where, like, hey, Travis Mayweather, who can fly and shoot and has all this experience and comes in and helps save the day again, like he did in the
Hmm.
seventh. Like, if
I,
he wasn't
I was
there,
just
this
gonna
might not
say
have
the
happened.
seventh.
Yeah, it's such a nice connection. And I feel like poor Anthony Montgomery, I mean, I'm sure he didn't have trouble memorizing his lines this time around, but he got some fun stuff to do. And I just really like the beginning of it. I think it went on a bit too long later in the end, but that first part, you're just like, oh, yeah. And I hadn't watched this one in a while, and I had forgotten that it was actually them that came in on the dock ship. And I was like, oh, hey, that was smart. Nice. So that first beginning where you're just like, oh, fun rescue, that's got to be one of my picks tonight for a pro.
Yeah, it's excellent. And the connections between this episode and the seventh are interesting in my mind right now because in the seventh we were like, oh, there's a great kernel to this bad guy character, but we didn't really go deep enough with it. And Travis is here to save the day. And then the same thing for
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
um,
That is funny.
but what's also funny is this is exactly my third pick. So
Oh,
Tra-
yay.
Travis and Reed bursting in with guns ablazing was fun. That was my note.
Well,
And
and I
yeah,
also have to say there were barrels. Like, I know there's
yeah,
plenty of people out
yeah.
there who are laughing because barrels, weird shaped barrels in this prison transport are falling on people during this whole thing. And that is such a Star Trek trope right
Of
there.
course,
It's
yeah.
perfect.
I mean, there should have been rocks coming out of the bulkheads too.
That would have been excellent as well. And random sparks even more than they had.
Yeah. Yeah, I chose this because I hadn't seen this in a while too, and I forgot. Like that just shocked me there. And delightfully, oh yeah, here we go. The cavalry's here. Great moment. So yeah, and the fight, you know, I was watching it and very aware of what I was thinking while I was watching it. Like, okay, I know I'm supposed to be thinking this is going on. I mean, this is the typical fight that has to happen right here. Like we said in Ceasefire. But it wasn't too bad. I mean, it was pretty dynamic and well done. So whatever, that's fine. Um, but yeah, that first moment when those two guys just burst through the door is fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those woohoo moments. All right, so we've been kind of dancing around it this episode, but I feel like we have some time to spend in the decon chamber tonight. So let's discuss the parts of the episode that just didn't gel with us. And Chris, let's start with you this time.
My first decon is the main aliens' prosthetics are pretty unimaginative. More cheeks prosthetic. What?
That, and on my list, I have something really similar. I said they're cheek of the week aliens, and the little like ridges they give them on their eyebrows make their eyes in shadow all the time. Like,
Yeah.
not so much Kuroda, but the unnamed official that's up on the Enterprise, who's talking to T'Pol all the time. Like, so unimportant he doesn't even get a name. Neither does the Nausicaan. Neither do any of the guards. Like, that
Yes.
says something. But his in particular was so heavy on his brows and with those cheeks, it felt like his eyes were recessed, and I felt like I didn't get as much out of his performance because I couldn't even see his eyes very well. And compared to the great makeup of all those aliens on the ship,
Exactly.
it was just a bummer.
Yeah, it's some of the aliens, like the one that was sitting next to Archer originally.
Mhm.
Wow, I've never seen that kind of alien on Star Trek. That was great makeup.
Yeah.
And then even the seaweed guy next to Trip, he had
Yeah.
some great makeup.
I very much enjoyed his face. I did not enjoy his seaweed, like his little
Go ahead,
dangly seaweeds.
Talk about it.
Okay, so I know it's your turn to do your cons, but like when Trip finally loses it on him and he gets all offended and he like curls up in a little ball and he's like self-stimming on his seaweed. I called it seaweed stroking because it's just, and it feels to me like it's just a really private moment that's a little too intrusive, and it really just kind of squicks me out. I don't like that part. But his face with all the like, they almost look like those beautiful polished rocks that you buy at like the old mine store when you go to the tourist trap town. Like it was beautiful. If maybe he could just shave, right? Like maybe it's a beard or something.
You told me about it before I watched it. I had no memory of seaweed stroking in the episode. I'm like, they're in a ship. They're not going to be on a beach somewhere, I don't think. And then when it happened, I just laughed out loud and texted you.
Yep. And I said, you're going to know it when you see it. And it's just not my jam. If it is yours out there, great. I'm glad that it's out there for you in the world, but I'd rather not. All right, back to your list. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's my first one. The prosthetics on the main aliens. It's just unimaginative, especially like you said, next to all the other incredible makeup jobs.
Yeah.
Okay. So my second one is, we've kind of already touched on it, but I just need to say it clearly. We have a missed opportunity to explore the effects of imprisoning youth.
Yeah.
And the course that they're trapped on because of that.
Yep.
And the other missed opportunity is doing some kind of thoughtful examination of a police state and being arrested without probable cause and that kind of stuff, right? So I think it's a missed opportunity that is at the core of this episode. It's like that was the initial inspiration, and then they just didn't develop that because it got caught up in all the other stuff. But yeah, that's my final decon.
Yeah, well, that kind of goes into one of mine, so I'll just kind of pull that a little further. I felt like, yes, they had all of these nuggets in this story that never really kind of came together, and they never really picked one. I almost feel like this got rewritten and had a couple drafts, and you just kind of didn't find the true core message. This to me just feels like another action episode. It could have been pretty much any other show. There wasn't anything that made this Star Trek-y to me. There wasn't anything terrible. There wasn't anything amazing. There wasn't that Star Trek moment. There wasn't that little aha, and it wasn't enough of a character study to make me okay with it not being that. Like, there is a time and a place for it, but then there needs to be something else. And I just kept always wanting this to do a little more or explore a little bit deeper on a bunch of the stuff that they kind of just touched on. And and that was just kind of always a bummer. Like, especially I feel like we've come off of a bunch of episodes that have been really good. Yeah. And then you have this one, and that's going to happen when you pump out 24, 26 episodes a season. They're not all going to be stellar, and that's fine. But maybe that's part of it too, is that we've just had so many where we're like, this is so good, and then you get this one,
Exactly.
and it feels like more of a letdown than it probably actually is. So maybe watching it out of order, it would not feel as meh.
Well, it's almost like we've almost been trained by Star Trek 2 though to accept like there's some mid-tier episodes and they're just like, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything can be the huge home run. And in some ways, like with the current crop of Star Trek, especially Discovery, like, man, remember season 2? Every episode brought tears.
Yeah.
Like there was always a huge emotional arc and just a climax that was just moving in every single episode. And
Yeah.
that's a lot to do, and maybe not necessary to do every time. Because what we were used to getting from Star Trek was some amazing tent poles and then just some workman episodes, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
classic stories that, are done kind of just competently. I feel like this is just competent.
Yeah. There's nothing that I can like pull out that's terrible. It's just
Yeah.
like how you put it, as it just seems like a missed opportunity.
Yes.
There was a different direction to take this story. There were a couple different directions, and I felt like it just took easy, good guys fight the power of the bad cops show of the week. And that was
Mm-hmm.
even a trope for TV back then, 20 years ago. So meh.
Yeah.
But
Meh.
I
Yeah.
also I had a couple other little things. I did talk about the alien makeup making them be so shadowy, but holy bananas, they had the 2000s gel hair too. Did you notice that?
Oh yeah.
All those Enolians, it was like the spiked backwards into literal points with
Yes.
gel behind their heads. And I was like, oh man, I bet that hurt if they fell on you. And I have another one of those. I really hope the universal translator is good about stuff, because when Trip is describing how the Nausicaan needs to turn the little valve, he's going, oh yeah, counterclockwise, at least 90 degrees. I'm like, do all
Have
I'm
clocks.
not sure. Right. Do you have clocks, and do they go the same direction? And do they know what that means? Like, okay.
Mm.
So that just, it's the same thing like when, last season when Silic is like, you have 5 minutes. I'm like, but what are minutes to you? Like, and that's happens in so many episodes, and it's just a hand waving thing. And I'm just gonna say thank you, Universal Translator. I'm sure you translated it into whatever clockwise means in their
Yeah, I mean
world, but
that's how the story has to work.
exactly.
They just have to get through those kind of things for sure. But yeah, that is funny. I didn't think about that. Do they have clock faces on Nausicaa?
Right, exactly. Like, does this make sense? I mean, maybe they use piles of stones. Like, there's many other things. It's a very human centric expression, I guess.
Yes.
And then, yeah, that's pretty much it, because it's just kind of a meh episode, and that's the biggest thing. There's nothing that exciting. I mean, how many times do we sit here and talk? Oh, I had a whole list of these, and I had to combine them together,
Ooh,
and that just
nope.
isn't the
Not
case.
not for this one. This was
No.
tricky. This was
Yeah.
this was hard to come up with my 3 pros.
Well, then let's put it back to something positive and move into our newest segment, our view screen on.
Mind if we take a look? Prettiest set I ever saw.
We are celebrating the artistic direction in Enterprise. We like to highlight something that was particularly beautiful or well shot in the episode. So, Chris, why don't you start us out tonight?
Oh man, did they just serve a shot up for me on a silver platter? Because it's the shot of the Enterprise from the top
Mm.
over the planet with the continent below and the ocean, and it was just so cool and beautiful. We don't get that shot often. And what I love about Enterprise is we have so many interesting, unique shots of Enterprise orbiting a planet more than any
Yeah.
other show. Sometimes we see the Enterprise upside down. It's just all these different angles, but I don't remember seeing this kind of shot much at all in Enterprise. So I have to call that out. It was beautiful, just looking down at the Enterprise over a continent and the ocean.
Yeah, the NX-01 is a gorgeous ship. And anytime you get that like slow like shot of them just moving across, it's just glorious. And this one, the coloring was pretty, the lighting was pretty. I agree. That was my runner-up shot. So
It's the
nice job.
perfect shade of gray.
Yes, it is the perfect shade of gray. All right. Well, my view screen on for tonight is takes us back to the cold open, and I really like how they framed the shot of T'Pol, and she's like on the left third of kind of the screen, and then the rest of it is the view screen behind her with the tumbling shuttlecraft just behind her tumbling across to the right. And so that is gorgeous. But then watching Jolene Blaylock's face acting in this too, as she's asking questions, and we're hearing Hoshi responding and Malcolm responding, and there's no life signs, and this, that, and the other, that looks like they took damage from they got shot, and it's just really neat to see her trying to work through things. And it ends with just that shot where if you didn't know T'Pol, you wouldn't know she was troubled, but she's troubled. And then the shuttlecraft starts tumbling off the edge. Like it's a pretty shot.
It's so good. That's a great one. Even the shot of the communicator floating inside the shuttle pod is really cool too.
Yeah, and just different. And like we said at the beginning, it really gets you intrigued for this episode. In fact, it's probably, for me, one of the most exciting moments in the episode. So had to well, no, just because it really got you excited and pumped up for it. So I think I had to honor that one.
Yeah, Enterprise is good at teasers. They are very good at them.
Oh, yes. So after those beautiful shots, we have now come to the time where we discuss our favorite parts of the episode, our Porthos picks. So if our picks were mentioned already in the discussion, we'll expand a bit more here, but I didn't hear any dogs bark, so I think we have a few more great moments to discuss. So Chris, what's your Porthos pick for the episode?
It's the very last scene when Archer turns to the Enolian and says, "I'll give you one right now," the report.
Kuroda's dead. The other 11 prisoners are under guard. As you're aware, my engineer and I were falsely arrested. We almost wound up in Canamar. Makes me wonder how many others don't belong there. You wanted a report? You've got one.
Classic Archer. Just shoves it in their face. And again, this is hinting at that other more philosophical, social commentary episode that was here, but not developed. Like they waited to the very last line to punch into it. And it was a great moment, but it didn't carry as much weight as it should because we didn't really flesh out this theme throughout. But again, it's a great line, great reading by Scott Bakula. And at least it ends the episode on a strong Star Trek moment. And this is, for me, the Star Trek moment of the episode.
Well, you want to know what's hilarious? That's my pick too.
Yeah.
So maybe we need a whole bunch of Porthos barking right here. Like give him a piece of cheese or something, because that's pretty funny. But yeah, I called it the Captain Archer mic drop on the ambassador or official or whatever he is about Canamar and their capture. Because yeah, you're right. This is Archer and he says nothing rude. He says nothing inappropriate. He says nothing untrue. But the way he says it and the intensity, and you said the way that Bakula delivers this, and that he gets that look in his eyes, that's the look where, like, if you're on the receiving end, you're like, oh crap, like, because it's really intense, and his words are so sharp. And it's great. And then there's Trip in the background, just giving them the look. And T'Pol. And that's my favorite part might be like Archer and Trip walk around the corner. T'Pol's still standing there. She doesn't say a word. She just looks at the ambassador. Her hands are behind her back. And she just turns and walks away around the corner. And he's just there. And I'm like, and scene. Because that was a good way to close this episode. Like the beginning and the end of this episode are fantastic. I wish we had done so much more in the middle, because these were the pieces that they had there. So Great pick.
You too.
Accessing library computer data.
Here on First Flight, we love trivia and behind-the-scenes tidbits, so we pick a few to share about each episode. So why don't I start tonight? This episode, interestingly enough, originally developed from an unused ending from Judgment, which involved Enterprise attempting to intercept a prison ship, which Archer was aboard and rescue him from that vessel. So I was wrong. I mean, the kernel of this episode isn't some commentary on the police state. It's they wanted to rescue Archer from a prison ship, which isn't a bad way to start, building a story around. But I just thought that was kind of interesting.
It is kind of interesting. Well, I think it makes it feel like we knew this wasn't the original story.
Yeah.
And there you go. It's originally developed from something else. And they said from the ending of something else. And I think that makes sense. They took a piece they liked and said, go. And there wasn't enough piece there or connective tissue. However, I have a lot of connective tissue for my trivia. So I've got just a whole bunch of rapid fire, tiny little things. So first of all, the episode was nominated for an Emmy for its prosthetic makeup effects. Bravo, minus the seaweed. The rank pin worn on the Enolian official's collar is a modified version of the Red Squad pin, which is pretty cool.
Oh.
Yeah. Melvaran mud fleas were later mentioned in the 2009 film Star Trek. And then the Canamar, the prison, was named after the production staff associate Valerie Canamar. And here's the thing that made me think, okay, I am not the only person who thinks this looks like seaweed, because the things hanging from Zumas, the Trip's alien neighbor's face, are actually artificial fishing lures.
Oh, gosh.
They're supposed to look like seaweed because they're supposed to be for fish. So
there you go.
I feel vindicated right there with my little potpourri of trivia there.
The Vindicator.
Well, I'm not sure I want to be her, but I will take the vindication.
There you go.
All right, well, speaking of fun V words, it is time for our Vulcans Verdict. The time for...
Well done.
Thank you, I'm trying. It's time for that Vulcans Verdict, which is our final thought and grappler rating. So, Chris, on a scale of 1 to 10 grapplers, what are you giving this episode?
Man, I struggled scoring this one. But I love grapplers.
Me too.
So does La'an.
I know, that's the perfect line.
Yes, it is. Okay, so I struggled because I'm like, it's not terrible. It's just Yeah. It just doesn't grab you. It's not memorable. And it's a missed opportunity. So I scored it as a 5.5.
And that's really interesting because my notes are kind of the same thing. It's just like, meh, the episode is blah. I don't really feel like the Star Trek moment was momenty enough. And that's kind of how I ended up with this episode. It's fine, but it's just not enough. However, it is not actively awful either.
Yes.
It's just, I mean, there's nothing in here that's truly offensive. There's nothing that, aged poorly. There's no, bad sexist jokes, because there really aren't that many women in here, besides our two. So it's just, and maybe that's part of it. It just feels like this is Archer's time to be, the smart yet super tough guy. And that's just not my favorite flavor of Star Trek. So this one ended up as a 5.5 for me as well. Look at that. We're really on track tonight. It's kind of fun when that happens. Well, then after those somewhat disappointing grappler ratings here, let's finish up with re-highlighting the positive things. Let's do a quick recap of our pros for Canamar. So run us through your picks, Chris.
Well, I have Archer quickly adapts his identity to become sympathetic to Kuroda. Then my second one is Kuroda's arrest at 16 starts him on a life of criminality, that little story. And then my last pro is Travis and Reed bursting in with guns a-blazing. And my view screen on is the shot of the Enterprise NX-01 from above a planet. And my Porthos pick is that, as you called it, Archer mic drop, where he's like, you wanted a report? You've got one.
Those are all great pros in an episode where we said we were struggling to find them. So you know what? Even the episodes that aren't our favorite have so many glorious moments in them. So let me remind you of the things that I enjoyed in this episode.
Please.
My first pick was the plasma trick to disable the patrols, which was a callback in universe to when that happened to the Enterprise and Precious Cargo. My number two was the Nausicaan, and just all about him, his design, his makeup, his feeling, his being more than just the muscle of the villain. And my number three is Malcolm and Travis bust in. Travis can fly and shoot, is what it says in my notes, which is fantastic. My view screen on was T'Pol in front of the view screen with the shuttle tumbling behind her. And then my Porthos pick is that mic drop that Captain Archer does at the end.
Beautiful.
My chronometer's running backwards, sir.
Incoming transmission.
You read my letter?
We want to remind you that we adore getting feedback and thoughts from listeners, as we hope you could tell from our last mailbag episode. And we have another one coming up soon.
Yeah.
We had so much fun sharing and discussing your ideas and insights, and we had so much fun chatting on social media with so many of you. And so we're collecting again for the next mailbag episode. So this is your call for any grappler ratings, Porthos picks, view screen on picks, or just general comments. Please get them to us so you can be part of our next mailbag episode.
Yes, please do reach out and share any thoughts or smiles you have for us, and use our personal hashtag Carrot Crew. And I just have to say, if you're watching any modern Star Trek, have you been noticing the carrots? Because I have, and I'm thinking that's put out there just for us, Carrot Crew. So you can reach us at First Flight Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We're also on YouTube under the Tricorder Transmissions Network channel. The best place to reach me personally is still on Twitter at Abby M. Summer. That's SOMMER, exploring some other options, but still there for the moment. Chris, where's the best place to reach you?
Well, it's either called Twitter or called X,
Yeah,
whatever.
We'll see how that ages.
Yeah. You can find me at Shelf Nerds on Twitter or on my YouTube channel, Completing the Shelf.
We want to thank you for spending this time with us. We'll be back next time with The Crossing, the 18th episode of Season 2. And as always, we leave you with this quote from Captain Jonathan Archer in your moment of melody.
The most profound discoveries are not necessarily beyond that next star. They're within us, woven into the threads that bind us, all of us, to each other.
The kids wanted to snuggle a little bit right before bed. And so what did I put on? Those old scientists.
Of course. Well, we were going to watch it because I watched it last night really late. We had friends that stayed over after the party and everything. And my husband hasn't watched it yet because we're going to do it after the girls go to bed. And I'm like, we could watch it with them. And he's like, or we could go out and get some exercise. And I'm like, yeah. But then they heard that and they're like, I thought we were going to watch Mommy's Star Trek. And I was like, yeah, I thought we were going to watch Mommy's Star Trek. So we're going to do it tomorrow with them. I'm like, I don't have enough time before we record. So.
And this is Lower Decks, but it's clean Lower Decks.
Yes.
Like my kids can watch it. Because I always felt like I just filter all that stuff out. So when I don't remember when there's stuff like that in Lower Decks, because it just actually for all media, it just filters through. Maybe that's what being a teacher has done to me.
Well, and it's funny because one of my good friends, she's got a son and he's in late middle school. And when I was visiting her last summer, and he was saying that he absolutely loved Lower Decks, but there's 3 episodes they wouldn't let him watch yet. And I was like, okay, I wonder which 3 they are. And then I immediately went, Oh, I bet I know what two of them are, just because
Uh-huh.
like she was, and I asked her later, I said, how did you decide what was okay and not okay? And she goes, it's more like we're gonna watch them together, and will he be massively uncomfortable watching it with me? And she's like,
Hmm.
until he can get over like that part of it, because he's in the I'm embarrassed about everything about puberty and sex and all that because I'm
Hmm.
in seventh grade. She's like, it's not that we don't want him to watch it and he wouldn't understand and wouldn't find it funny. It's just that if he watched it with us, we would scar him for life. And I was like, you know what? Valid.
Oh
Valid.
no, I don't even want to watch the Megado one.
That is probably my least favorite. Ooh, but then there's Peanut Hamper. Okay, but that's a category unto itself.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
Peanut Hamper
yeah,
stands alone.
yeah. That Peanut Hamper one, and then Mugatu, and then Terminal Provocations. I can't stand Badgie in that.
Oh, I like Badgie.
I
I like
cannot.
I
I
like
don't.
Go
I
ahead.
don't like the insane violence because it's
Yeah.
not funny.
Yeah. It I like that they set him up as a villain that
Sure.
reoccurs though. Like
Yes.
I have a very hard time watching that. Well, we've talked about me getting squicked out when people get punched, even in cartoons and stuff like that. It's not my jam, but I like that he's around and like I like the Moriarty-ness of that. That's exactly the point, that he's built to be a reoccurring nuisance.
I like the idea,
Yeah.
but Lower Decks is a comedy, and there was absolutely it was being played for humor, but absolutely nothing funny about what was happening because Tendy and Rutherford were terrified for their life.
Yeah.
And like that kind of stuff works on Rick and Morty. Like that kind of violence doesn't bother me on Rick and Morty because that show has trained me that Rick is going to have some crazy way to get them out of it. They're not actually in any danger. So
Right.
we're just laughing at Morty being afraid because Morty's afraid and Rick's got it. There's no danger. There's actual danger in that one. Anyway,
Yeah.
off my soapbox. My soapbox.
Enunciation.
Ugh. Today I blew my daughter's mind because my dad brought a big box, and so what did my kids want to do with it? Play
Playing it.
Starship.
Oh, of
Play
course.
Starship. So like, Dad, can you put the computers in there, the Protostar computers? So I drew those in there, and then I told them, you know what these computers are called? And they're like, what? Lacars or Elcars. I always called it Lacars.
That's awesome. Like Pepe Le Pew.
Yeah. And she's like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, it means library computer access and retrieval. Oh man, I just ruined it. Library computer access and retrieval system. And I just rambled it off like that. She just went, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those moments.
I remember. Go ahead.
I was just saying, if you ever have to put a resume together of like stupid skills you have that are useful for nothing but kind of cool, like those are the kind of things that you can put on there. Like can ramble this off, knows this many digits of pi, coughs really well when she has bronchitis. The list of the resume for what you're really like.
Yeah, I remember in elementary school standing in line for lunch and just rattling off, "We are the Borg. We have come to assimilate you. Resistance." The whole thing. We will add your biological. The whole thing.
Nice.
And my friends were like, "That was amazing. What was that?" I'm surprised I had friends.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you had great friends.
Yeah, they knew nothing about Star Trek until The Rock showed up on Voyager, and then
oh wow,
I was singing the gospel of Star Trek at that point because they all loved wrestling.
That's funny.
Yeah,
well, it worked. Good job, UPN.
that's true.
They did some things right.
Yeah, that episode's not too bad.
It's not the worst by far.
Yeah. I like the Hirogen plot. It's good.
Yeah.
Oh, trending on Twitter right now, those old scientists.
Because it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Like seriously, this season of Strange New Worlds, I feel like
it's just fun.
Yes, and 5 of them I think are really, really good episodes of Star Trek. Like, even if the rest of them are absolute flops, which I do not think they will be, we have 50% that I consider true, like, essential Trek for all times kind of things. That's a crazy high percentage.
Yeah. I don't put them as, I think Ad Astra per Aspera, that's up there. That's a Trek for all time. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, right up there too. The rest have been fine for me and good. And I can't wait to revisit them. Even this one, like, I really enjoy it. I mean, that Riker moment just kills me.
I know, it's so funny.
Especially because Frakes is on the other side of the camera in that moment, probably dying as well.
Well, and what's so funny with the Section 31 walk is that my husband actually was part of a race walking team. We have one around here, and that's what they look like.
Yes.
I know this was a long time ago. He's very embarrassed now, but like, we've had champion race walkers from the college that's 20 miles down the road. And so when he really gets going, it looks like that, and the girls die laughing. Like, it's the one thing we can do to break them when they're in a funk or they're having a fit or whatever, is if we can get them to look at him doing that walk. So every time I see Boimler do it, I laugh. And then to see Jack Quaid translate that into real life, I'm like, oh my God, that's just a skinny version of my husband's fast walk. Like, that one, that's the one. Like, Riker is way up there, but that one tops it for me. Because he just pivots and just flies away.
Worf's honor.
Yeah.
look, Abby, we better get in the episode because
we should.
We're going to just unspool into just praise.
Okay.
Okay. That was less than an hour.
I know. I just thought the same thing. Like, oh my God. Well, it's because it's boring. Like, I just, and I really do think, like, maybe I'm, because I was prepping this one as we were finishing the last one, maybe that carried over, that we had such a good one, and now it's like, but I don't know.
Maybe. I think it's just a competent episode. Just it's there. Yeah.
Well, I really do think it could have been some other show. Like, take off the makeup and take it off space and make it, like an armored car or something. And it could have been just about any other show. Just change a few of the specific space details, and
that's true.
And that just feels plugged in. So
that's a good point. It could have been 24.
Yeah, it could have been. And like, those aren't the kind of shows that I usually choose to watch. Like, it's just not, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my favorite thing. It felt more mindless than Star Trek usually is. Star Trek isn't usually mindless watching for me.
If we got more about police state or just adolescent, like if maybe a lot of the prisoners were adolescents.
Yeah.
And this guy wants to save them from going down that path. And so he's there's a whole story there. And then Archer being on the side of the prisoners, and, then that moral thicket he's navigating, Prime Directive, all the, there could be a whole thing right there.
Yeah.
That just blossomed in my brain. But we're not also running 26 episodes in a production a year, so
with UPN breathing down our necks. So
make it sexy, make it action packed.
Yeah, make things explode.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, hey, we've had some really good ones. So
yeah, we have.
I scored this the same as Precious Cargo.
Isn't that funny?
You gave Precious Cargo a little bit less.
Yeah, but you know what? I feel like when we go back at the end of the season and we do all the stats and like we look at all our averages and everything, it's not surprising to me most of the time which ones end up where. Like, there's a reason that I don't revisit episodes. And like, I feel like there's episodes that if I'm just randomly going through and going, I feel like this. There are some I don't go back to because I actively dislike them. And there are, and not many, but like they have a bad association, or like they're just ones I'm like, I can't do this one right now. And then there's episodes where I'm just like, that one's just all right. And like, if I turn on the live channel on Paramount Plus and it's on, am I probably going to just let it go? Yes, because it's Star Trek. But
Mm-hmm.
am I ever going to just go back and be like, oh, I feel like watching Canamar today? Probably not.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine being in the mood where this would be the first thing that I'd be like, yeah, that sounds exactly right for today. Like it just doesn't.
I guess if you need something on that you aren't going to be able to pay attention to, but you just need something on,
Yeah.
might work.
But there's better things for that.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Are you on Tricorder's Patreon? Like, do you get their
No.
Patreon? Okay.
No, I'm not.
Then do you want a happy surprise tomorrow, or can I blow your mind with something fun?
Sure.
So tomorrow, the weekly track that's gonna drop is Alex and Thad and Caleb. They recorded it when they were playing that epic game yesterday.
Oh, awesome.
It's so fun. Like, I listened while I was making dinner. Like I actually thought yesterday when I saw those pictures of them and how Alex was like creaming everybody before Thad even touched the dice. And I'm just like, man, they should have just recorded a weekly track while they were all there together. That would have been so much fun. And then it dropped tonight. And I was just like, oh, they did. And I sent him a message and Alex is like, enjoy. And Caleb's like, I almost told you yesterday when we were talking. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you didn't because it was so fun. And
That's great.
I just had to tell somebody who would understand how fun that is. Like,
oh, yeah.
I'm excited. It's a good one too.
I'm glad Caleb is able to do some stuff
Yes,
outside
me
of being
too.
dad.
Yeah. Oh, twins. Wow.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, so those old scientists. I was up way too late last night because and this is me being so selfish going, okay, Abby, put in the back of your head that next year Lila's birthday party will not be on the day that Comic-Con is, because you're going to want to sit and watch things and watch next year. They won't do anything. And I'm not going to base her birthday party around it, honestly. But I was like, of all the times to do this, the day that I have a house full of small people that I have to prep for a party and I have people staying over, well, I guess I'm staying up late because I'm not going to sleep without it going into my brain. That's for sure.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I had family in and all these trailers are coming out. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm putting them on a YouTube playlist. I'm like, oh, come on, come on.
Yeah. Well, I would just go to the bathroom sometimes. Which I have to escape.
Yeah, well.
But, you know, as an introvert, my house gets so loud because there's a vaulted ceiling. It's all tile. And even when you just have 2 extra people, it gets really loud. So I just have to escape a little bit. But yeah, wow, I couldn't believe that they've dropped that early. I was like, oh my goodness, are they trying to distract us from all the other stuff that they've been not doing well? Should we just talk about the episode? From the top? Because so goodness sakes, we start in a Lower Decks episode.
I know.
It just felt so good.
Yes.
I miss Lower Decks.
I do too. Summer feels like when we should be watching Lower Decks. And honestly, this month I've rewatched 2.5 seasons of it, and I'm probably gonna finish it before the end of the month. Like, because it just July and August feel like they should be Lower Decks all the time. It's a summer vibe for me. Yes, and always Prodigy.
Well, yeah, I just finished an impromptu season 4 Discovery rewatch.
Because it's so good.
Yeah, I didn't do the whole thing. I started with But to Connect, and then just couldn't stop.
Yeah, because it's so good. It's so smart.
It is.
And there's such different flavors. Like, that's what I love about Trek right now, is that there's so many different things. And like, that's when I was just saying, when you're randomly poking around going, oh, I want this and this, and I'm in the mood for this and this. You have those moods in modern Trek, and it's great.
Well, but yeah, Discovery's its own flavor, but there's nothing more Star Trek than those last 3 episodes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, all about communication and math, and it's just really cool. So yeah, did that. But I Well, how did you feel about the Nausicaan portal? I love that we got something more about the Nausicans that's unexpected.
I loved it too, and I loved how when they translated it, it just said this is a time portal. Like,
Yeah.
because there's how many things do we put directions or
Yes.
basic stupid language on, and somebody could find it, in space a million years later randomly and be like, oh, what does this say? And it's the mattress tag that says remove under penalty of law. Like it was just, this is a time portal. Yes, it is. And I thought that was funny to me, especially since I've been thinking about Nausicaans this week because of Canamar. So I was like, ooh, it's Nausicaan week.
Yeah, it was perfect.
Yeah. And I liked the transitions. Like, I feel like
me too.
They did them really well, both ends of it. Like, the first time I watched it, when I saw them going from Strange New Worlds back to Lower Decks, that transition through the portal, I was like, ooh, when are they going? Oh, they already did. Like, it was really, really smooth. And that's beautiful. It didn't feel like a Lower Decks episode in Strange New Worlds or a Strange New Worlds episode in Lower Decks. It felt like an episode of each, but at the same time,
yes,
it was more than the sum of its parts. It was magical.
It was a Star Trek episode.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that everybody geeked out about something was such a Star Trek thing too.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I remember months ago when they, because this was announced that this was happening.
Oh, yeah.
And in some interview, Tony Newsom said something like, yeah, we're still our characters, just toned down. I didn't find them toned down at all. I felt like they were exactly Boimler and Mariner.
Oh, well, and it was funny because, like I said, the physicality that you saw with Boimler in real life, it never felt too much, but it also felt so him. It was that fine line of everything, and like the hand flapping and the scream, they were perfect. They were exactly the scream. It was perfect. And they felt so much like themselves. And I think one of my favorite Mariner parts is when they're talking to the Orions and they're explaining stuff, and she goes, I feel like he's not listening. Like, it was just such a little aside in there. Like, yeah, we just said that. I feel like he's not listening. Like, it was so her. And like, if you've watched the Ready Room, they were talking about how that Frakes just let them have so many little ad libs and asides and just kind of let it roll because he understood where they were coming from, and he told them to go in guns blazing, like, give us everything, and if we need less, we'll pick and choose. And like, I think Tawny said the same thing. She goes, they're gonna have like 3.5 years to edit this, so like give them whatever and they will make it tone perfect. And they really did. Like, it could have gone wrong so many ways, and it never did.
Yeah, it's such a unique, it's the only thing like it. Like, the only thing I was thinking of while I was watching it the first time, or after I watched it, was like, this feels like an event just like Trials and Tribulations.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But like, it's in the same kind of category now in my head. That one's a marvel of technical achievement, of course. But this was just something, there's nothing else that is like it in the franchise. And it's so satisfying. And my hope is that people go then watch Lower Decks after this.
Me too. And I loved that we got Tendi and Rutherford, even though they weren't in real life, we still got them in the episode. And and Ransom, and he got to comment on his real life wife. Like, that was just perfect. And I really liked
the joke.
I know, the pinup joke. And then Una winks at Boimler at the end, like, oh, that was just a chef's kiss, perfect little cherry on top. Like, just everything. You could tell they were having so much fun.
But fun without sacrificing compelling moments when Una's like, they put that on the poster?
I know.
Oh my goodness, that was good. A good callback to that episode.
Well, and I really liked that they were talking about the importance of taking breaks too. Like,
Mm.
that's something that okay, the past two Strange New Worlds episodes, first of all, Pike did, and I pointed this out way back in Unexpected when Archer did his trip. Somebody could order me to take a nap anytime they want. Like, it is a dream of mine for someone in authority for me to go take a nap. Okay, I love naps. I will go take a nap. But so we've had him do that kind of thing. And I think it's important that they're showing that, these are the youngest, the best, the brightest, but you still need some time to just be. And that they're pushing her to do that, and that she is struggling with that, because I feel like that is a really common part of our society these days, especially with younger people, that they feel like they just have to keep going and have to keep pushing, and they feel all this pressure. And I really liked how we said, Ortegas doesn't have a ton to do, but she was balancing that out, going, when we were in the war, you had to take time when you could find it. Like, this is important.
Yeah.
Pike learned the same lesson. Take the time to be with your people when you find it. And like, that's so beautiful and so a timeless message, and a very much needed message. So in this goofy, silly comedy.
Yeah, the episode itself is a break from a standard episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was so spot on. And okay, the lab scene.
Yeah.
Every second of that lab scene makes me happy. Like, the goggles, the explosions, the banter, the Boimler scream, like it's just perfect. It's just perfect.
And I also love how Boimler and Mariner just are, especially Boimler, they dive right into the middle of the character stories that have been going on with La'an and Kirk. Like, there's a little bit there. And then, of course, that chapel scene in the turbo lift was tough.
Yeah.
Tough to watch.
Jess Bush is doing such an amazing job.
Yes, she is.
With big emotion this season. Like, and changing on a dime. Like, that was not the conversation she expected going into that turbo lift, but it's the conversation she got. And it was just very well done. Now,
I was considering, like, man, what does this Enterprise crew think about Starfleet in the future that is just kind of wacky? Like, is this where we're going?
Well, yeah, but at the same time, like, they could quote code. They knew, the rules for time travel. They were so very Starfleet. He figured out how to find the Orions. Like, there's all that stuff that shows that they're massively competent. They're just so young, and I love how they were doing all of their little, like, side comments just as loud as everybody else. And they're talking about, I don't want to get sent back to a riot in San Francisco, and they're like, are these references alarmingly specific? Yeah, it's just like, yes, like it's just fun.
In the shuttle, when Boimler or Mariner says, everyone talks really slow here.
Yes, and quietly. It is.
That was funny.
And you wonder how much of that was the writers and how much of that was just them being able to lean into it like they normally do. Because Frakes was talking about how he went to Mike McMahon and they worked together. Like, they weren't, this is your part, this is my part. And he said it was a very different than the way he worked, but it was good because that kind of that freer energy, it kind of permeated the set, and you could tell, like, everyone in this episode was having fun, and that's just good. It's good to see.
The only part of the episodes that I have trouble watching are all the Spock smiling and laughing moments. They just they tweak you. Even my kids were like, why is he doing that?
Yeah.
They don't know, like, they know Spock. I have a picture of Spock in my room and from Prodigy, but it's not like they've been watching Spock like I have for 30 years. But to them it even, like, felt weird.
Yeah.
Which it's not a decon.
No, because it's supposed to feel weird. And they kept doing, like, the, like, close up, and man, Ethan Peck has some really square teeth, which I never noticed until this episode. Like, wow, you have incredibly square teeth. But
yeah, it almost looked like CGI, or like, that Harry Kim meme where he's getting shot, but someone made him smile. Like, it looked like that fake smile.
Yeah. But it is jarring, and I think that people who haven't seen one or the other, like Lower Decks fans watching this episode because of that, and Strange New Worlds fans watching because of that, both sets, even if you don't know Spock is going to realize that this is odd. And like you said, your kids knew it's just off enough. And okay, I have to say the music in this one, all of Nami Malaman's themes are coming back through. And okay, so I put out there that my wake up music on my phone alarm is the Comet Away With Me from season 1 soundtrack, and it's got like the little that's the comet theme, but it's Uhura's theme. Like when she's figuring stuff out and she's processing and she's doing her stuff. Like I heard it last week, I heard it this week on my second watch through, and I'm like, oh yes, it's her theme. And all of the characters' themes were through there from both shows. Like it was so well done. And I think that's part of what made the Spock stuff stand out, is because the music that was going on with it gently called your attention to this being dissonant to what it should be, and that was just so subtle and so well done.
Yeah, I think I commented on Twitter that Nami Malaman's Strange New World themes were immediately developed in Q&A.
Yeah.
In Q&A.
Yeah.
I never noticed until, now that I've been listening to the soundtrack, and then I watched Q&A, and I was like, bum 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 bum. I was like, oh, I love that theme, and it has existed from the beginning. No wonder she got the job. That was a great audition.
I mean,
I apologize for the singing.
No, you're fine. I can't sing either, but I cannot wait for this soundtrack. Like it is so good, and I've been thinking it every episode, and every episode even more. I'm just like, oh, I want this so much, and I hope that they are smart enough to release it sooner rather than later. I mean, I know they're releasing the musical songs, like you can already pre-save them on a whole bunch of the music services and stuff.
Oh really? But I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, there's a tweet floating around out there for it.
Okay.
I hope, because I know I'm going to want to do those songs as well. Like huge musical nerd as well. Like, whoo. But I want the background. I want Nami's music. I want it. I want it like a couple weeks after the season is done again. Like, let it be the way I end my summer, and then we go into the school year with Lower Decks. Like, it's so good. She's so good.
She is.
Yes. I can't wait to see what the next decades of her music is going to be like if she's already this good.
Absolutely. Speaking of the musical episode, though, my wife has agreed to watch it. She's like, oh, I'm going to watch that one because she loves musicals. So I'm like, yeah, all right.
Well, okay, so I'm trying to think in my head, who do we know that are good singers on this cast? We know Rebecca Romaine has some talent. We know that Christina Chong is a singer. She's got her 2 singles out, the album's out. Sully Gooding, she's got a Grammy, so like, she's good. Like, I don't know about anybody else. Do they sing? Like, are they going to auto-tune them? Are they just going to make them? I'm very curious.
I bet, what's her name who plays Nurse Chapel is a singer.
Jess Bush, probably.
Yeah, Jess Bush, yeah. Mamenga? Is he gonna mumble sing? I'm just sorry. I love his voice. It's so smooth and regal.
Yes.
But also, sometimes can't hear. But Ethan Peck, I don't think he can sing.
I think he can talk sing.
Yeah. In that Children of the Comet, he was not hitting the notes right.
Yeah.
And that's with sound editing.
Yeah, true. And what else is funny is that Christina Chong is such a great singer, but La'an has said multiple times that she doesn't sing. Like, is she going to be a really good? I'm hoping she's going to be a really good singer. Like, she's secretly a closet shower singer or something.
Or whatever this phenomenon, this spatial anomaly that causes them to become singers.
Yeah.
Reveals it to
and
her,
dancers.
Right?
Like, I'm sorry, but those background dancers, like going down the corridor, I was like, that's amazing. Amazing.
That's the thing. Season 2 of Strange New Worlds is just going to be known as the one where they let loose and had fun.
Yes.
They
Well,
just
and you know
did.
what's? I hope that everything with the strike
Mm-hmm.
ends positively for the strikers. Like I'm a billion
Yes.
percent behind that.
100%.
But I know season 3 was ready to start filming. So like, and they're getting all this feedback now for season 2, and it's majority good. Like, do you think that this is going to affect how they do season 3 when they get to it? Are they going to change things because of it? Are they going to go with what they had? Because they had no feedback on season 1 before they started filming season 2, and
Mm-hmm.
season 2 is so good. Like,
Yeah, and how long is it going to go on? How long is
mhm,
Paramount going to want to pay for the sets and the storage and all that and pay
yeah,
people to be on staff or whatever. I don't know how
yeah,
that all works, but we just gotta hope and pray that this strike concludes and that the selfish, greedy people realize that these people aren't going to give in. They're united and they're only hurting their own image. Not I
yeah,
guess they don't care about that, but yeah, it's baffling because they have nothing without these people.
yeah.
I almost
I know.
want I almost want a studio to produce a movie from the ground up by AI
Hmm.
to see how horrible it is or how it is
Yeah.
and so oddly off in some way. You know what I mean?
Yes. I, it, it's disheartening
Mm-hmm.
when you see how greedy it is out there, and when you hear all the stories. I mean, it's not surprising, which is the sad part, but I don't know. Nothing changes without a push. So I'm hoping that this is the push. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to stay
Yep.
positive.
Yep. Yep.
I think it's going to be a while still because the big studios aren't hurting yet. They have enough stuff. I think it's going to
Yeah.
be when they start feeling it and people start getting pissy because,
Mhm.
they have to have a throwback Thursday or whatever because they don't have any programming. It's going to be
It's
interesting.
it's an interesting time because like considering Bud Light, right? And the response
Mm-hmm.
to Bud Light
Mm-hmm.
and what Ben and Jerry's and different corporations that have taken a significant like brand recognition slaughter and also been hurt in their pockets too.
Yeah.
That it's like we the people, the consumers are realizing the power that we do have. And how do we mobilize that in this way? And I think what you were hinting at is we're going to be loud once programming stops, right? Or stupid reality show stuff pops up, or, quality is
Well,
really bad.
supposedly they're thinking about unionizing and striking as well
Mm.
because they're
Good.
not getting things, and the studios are wanting them to do more for
Hmm.
less because they don't have anything. So that might be what it takes.
Did you read the story? I think it was a thread some writer wrote on Twitter about how like Netflix and like companies like that are asking head writers never to hire a room and just hire people to write one-off scripts one time
Mm-hmm.
and then hire other people to revise those.
Yeah.
And that just explains the inconsistent quality in a lot
Yeah.
of
Yep.
media that's just kind of churned out.
Yep.
And I'm
I
grateful that
completely
Star Trek
agree.
has not experienced that or that we know of.
Yeah. Well, and I
I could see season 2 of Picard maybe going through that.
well, that's a big old showrunner jump in the middle.
Yeah.
That tone
Yeah.
you could tell when it. And again, I don't know. I hope what comes out of this too is even more flexibility for creatives
Mm,
to tell the story that they need to tell in the amount of time that it needs to take. Because like
yeah.
we've talked about this for
Yep.
Picard season 2, I feel like it was a 7 episode story that they stretched, and that's why that we get some things in there that don't wrap up or don't make sense or just feel unnecessary because they needed 10, but they had a 7 story, and that doesn't seem. I don't know.
Yeah.
There needs to be it needs to be about producing good work more than it is about producing more subscribers and more customers. And I'm sorry, if you're going to do this and all the services are going to start tracking down on like password sharing and all that too, guess what? Then you're going to have even more people who are ticked off. And yeah.
Anyway, that's from novices who don't really know much. At least me, you know. But those old scientists, that was a great one.
It's a balm to the soul of all this. And, you know, Tawny Newsome wrote a really interesting tweet that just all she said was, I don't think any type of AI could have written that. And that's all she had to say, because she's right.
Yeah.
Because there is no heart and soul behind AI, like that you were saying with the haiku tonight. You put it all in and it came out and it said nothing. Like, it said nothing. And there's plenty of stuff out there that says nothing already. What you want is the stuff that says something. Like, and I think when, you know, award seasons start coming up and there's nobody to give awards to because there's nothing, like, because that seems to be what studios care about too. Like, let's make one or two really big things that win us a whole bunch of awards and bring lots of people in and signing up, and, you know, who cares about the rest of it?
Okay, so here's the haiku. Ready?
Okay, yeah.
Hope flickers, then soars. Together they break the chains. Freedom's light ignites.
Nope, that's terrible.
It says nothing.
It says nothing. At least it says nothing about this episode. Like, it's a nice, vague freedom poem.
Yeah. So then I asked it, can you rewrite it to mention some characters?
Uh-oh.
So then it said, Archer's bold gambit, Canamar's prison binds tight, Trip and Travis strive. What?
Okay. Nope. Nope. It's like those old aliens from Sesame Street, the ones that would beam down and they'd be like trying to figure out. Yeah, and they went nope.
Yeah. Well, I have 3 more days of intense training, and then I'm on vacation.
There you go.
So I need to get to sleep, although I might finish watching those old scientists because I've only seen it once.
I've done it twice now. But I'm going to go watch it a third time with my husband, I think, if he's willing to stay up for, well, it's only 48 minutes. So, but oh my God, we didn't mention the fact that they put the monster sucking on the ship in the opening credits. I about died. Like, as soon as I realized they had animated them, and I had hoped, because, you know, sometimes they do the special, and then they put the koala in. I was
oh my gosh, I laughed
dying,
out
and
loud.
all I could do was think about Jim, and I'm like, oh my God, somewhere wherever Jim saw this the first time, I can see his face and like the expression with his arms up that he hooted. Like, oh, that was so perfect, perfect.
My daughter was like, Daddy, what is that? I'm like, that's a long story. I have to tell you later. She's like, all right, you'll tell me when I'm older. Because usually that's what I'm saying about things, but that's not it. It's just, I'll have to tell you another time.
Yeah. So beautifully done, though. Like, I hope that they put that out on Paramount Plus as like a clip, the animated opening credits, and that you can just watch it again. It's so beautiful. And you know,
I think
that's
it's on YouTube.
A lot of time. Is it?
I think so.
I
think I've seen it, or at least on Twitter. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Prodigy moment. We have all 20 episodes now. Awesome.
Yep.
I bought when it first went away from the Paramount Plus, I bought the whole season on Amazon.
So did I.
Of course, you couldn't get all of it. Well, now that I have it all, now I'm watching them on there with my kids. We watched Dreamcatcher, and the opening is so truncated. And
I know, it drives me crazy.
They sped it up too.
Yeah. The ending credits are small too, and
and it's a different song.
Yeah, I know, because I was watching it, and then I went out and I'm like, I don't have a Blu-ray player, but I can buy it on iTunes and I can buy it on Amazon and show my love that way. And when I get a Blu-ray player, we'll get there. But they did this. I'm like, they truncated it on Amazon. I wonder if that's because they want to put it on their 24-hour Amazon Video Kids show it, whatever. I'm like,
Mm.
I wonder if they did it on iTunes. Yeah, they truncated it on iTunes as well. And I'm like,
Oh,
right. And my girls were the ones who would always, with the opening credits, go
say
through and say
hello.
hi to all of the characters, and they're not all in there anymore. And it's like, that is
Yeah.
BS, because that is one of the best themes out there.
It's absolutely gorgeous. Now I can
Yeah.
understand why you wouldn't put in the whole, Trump French horn solo.
The French horns, right.
But the rest of it.
It's also like when you watch the episode, then you don't get the callbacks musically because they're not the same.
Yeah.
So I know that is a first world problem, but it's still a problem.
The end credits for season 4 of Discovery. Whoa. So amazing.
Yeah.
And I don't remember that being in the soundtrack. And if it's not, that's a crime. It might be, but I don't remember it being in the soundtrack for season 4.
Pull up my music.
I've recently listened to that.
I did too. No, you're right. Huh.
Yeah, it's one of the best pieces of music from the whole series.
I agree. I wonder if that means it's going to come back in on a different, because they started using Hugh's log from season 3. Or from...
Oh, was that it?
Wait, yeah, that's it's not on that one because it's on season 3 probably, or something really close to it, because it was Hugh's log that they it's on season 3. It's the 10th cut, because it's the log that he's saying when he's walking around, and Detmer has been talking to him, and he's worried about everybody and their stress levels, and then they pulled it to put it as the season 4 credits. That's exactly what it is. I'm looking through. It's not called that's why. I don't know that. I think it's longer than the actual credits are, so it's probably a longer version, but that's what it is.
That's it. That's what I was missing.
Yeah, I like that one too.
So gorgeous with all the strings and the piano. It's just
Discovery music is beautiful. There's a lot of Discovery tracks on my list that's favorites of Star Trek. So yeah, there's a lot of them on there.
Season 3 and 4, yes, for me.
Season 1 and 2 have a couple standouts, but season
1
3
is I respect it. It was a particular choice, but it wasn't orchestral,
Yeah,
and that's kind of what I want.
It was smaller. It was more personal feeling than some of the big sweeping ones. One of my probably top 5 pieces of Trek music of all time is Giorgio's Goodbye from season 3. That piece.
Yeah.
And it pulls in all the different themes and the cello in that, and then it ends, and I became obsessed with that piece of music, and then went back and rewatched it, and that scene, that scene is always intense and wonderful, and those two women are powerhouses, but once I knew every beat of that music, I was like a wreck, but in the best way. And when she steels herself to walk through the Guardian of Forever and she takes that breath and the music swells, I'm just like, that's perfection.
Yes. So good.
It is. All right. So we have a positive to end on, but we need to send you to bed because you've been yawning this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this one is going to have more button than it has episode. So,
and more entertaining button, yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
A worthy button. And you know
Absolutely.
what? I don't feel like we even talked about the whole episode, but it was good. What is the Star Trek moment of those old scientists? There's not as much. The taking a break thing. But it was just felt like hanging out with good friends.
Yes. And I liked what Pelia said too to Boimler about, pretending to be that until you suddenly were. Like, I feel like that's a good message for people who are starting something new. Like, go in with some confidence, that's a hard lesson.
And then there's the whole Orion scientist thing too.
Yeah.
Just want to get credibility, kind of like Dr. Vega from Suspicions. I just recently watched that.
I love that one.
Me too. Oh, Discovery season 5. Did you watch that?
Yes. And okay,
Epic.
Can I just say how much I didn't realize I was missing Saru? Like, and I say this every single time, but like, I just miss Saru. And I know I can go back and rewatch anytime I want to, but like, something about Saru is calming for me, and I just resonate with him. And like,
Same.
I was so glad to see Tarina in there. Like, oh, please end them happy. Like,
Yes.
I want them to end happy. I want Saru to just have a gentle time for a little while. He's been through so much. Like, not that they all have it, and obviously Michael takes the cake for being through stuff, but yes, it looks so good. I really like Discovery. Like, it's a totally different flavor again, like we were saying, but I really, when I want that flavor, it's amazing. And since I rewatched the whole series since probably Christmas time, it's
cool.
just been good. It's
That's
been
cool.
so good.
Yeah. The Saru moment on the bridge is just like,
yes,
I'm home. Yeah. Love Saru.
Me too.
That's a better end.
That is a better ending.
Twin flames, two hearts, I'm fire, we're burning together.